What a wonderful, inspirational song. What a timely song. That song is calling for all of us to be the light in a world today that someone want to put the illusion of darkness all around. What we have to know is that darkness is an illusion. And when we realize that darkness is an illusion, that we can step up and allow the light to come forward, the darkness is wiped away. And inside each of us is the light of God. And all we have to do is awaken that light, allow it to shine, and it come forward to bring out what God has already put in. Because darkness is only an illusion to those who don't want to awaken their eyes. Good morning. I'm about to say good morning. Good morning. My name is Gregory Guice. I want to say how grateful I am to be here. And before I begin, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Francine Guice. As I said earlier today, I learned a long time ago, make sure you introduce your wife. I made a mistake a long time ago, and I didn't introduce her, and I heard about it as soon as I got home. You didn't introduce me. And I learned, a good man, as they say, if you introduce your wife, you will have a happy home. So you don't want to go around and make that mistake. I'd like to thank your outstanding minister. She's on the rise in unity, if you don't know that. She is one of the most outstanding unity ministers. And you have to be proud of yourself and give yourself a hand, because you have right here, and I will tell you this, I've been to a number of unity churches and centers, but you have something rich here because you have a thriving, vibrant spiritual center. And I will tell you, right here at this place, in this very spot, God is working with you to create something unique and something special. So keep doing what you're doing, because see, from this very base, God is going to energize this spot. God is touching you right now. You have the right leadership. You have the right people. Just keep going forward, because it's going to be a catalyst throughout this Florida area. And we need that in unity right now. We need to continuously build, because this is where believers come from. And I just want you to know that. So I'm grateful to be here. I want to thank Bob and Danae for allowing me to be at their home. Thank you for bringing me in and allowing me to stay there. They've been a blessing for me. But I want to share with you that before I tell you about my story and tell you about my talk, the title of my talk is called The Gift of Grace. But first, allow me to get centered, because my energy get wound up and I get... But please, just let me take a moment. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength, my Redeemer. Show me thy ways, O Lord, teach me thy path, and lead me in thy truth. For truly I know I stand on your holy ground. Allow me to be a vessel to speak your words. Flow within me so I may go forward to simply be a vessel unto you. But truly I know right now I stand here because of you. And for this I simply say, thank you, God. And so it is, and so may it be. I want to share with you my story. You see, my story is really about the gift of grace, the grace that I had to learn. But I want to talk about this advent of peace. You see, this is a very special candle we lit today, because peace during this season of Advent, this second candle, is so very special. Advent, as you know, means the expectation, the anticipation, and the preparation. And how we come together is very important, because we have to build all of this together for the coming Christ that lives within ourselves, so we can bring it forward to make this world a greater place to be. But we have to go through these stages of having faith, of bringing out peace, and having love and joy. But somewhere it has to start within yourself. But my story was only a key. And I'm going to tell you about my story, because that's where I had to find it, because each of us are on our own journey. And my story began some time ago. It began on a time period called back on March the 14th. And during that time period, I had what many of you may not have known if you didn't know me. It started one early morning. I'm a child I'm going to begin with my childhood. I had polio as a child when I was about 4 or 5. How many remember that? I remember being in the iron lung as a small child. I didn't get that vaccination. They used to shoot you so you wouldn't get polio. You remember Forrest Gump when he was running out and had that? Yeah, I was one of those kids. I remember being in that iron lung back in Detroit. I grew up always learning to overcome. I remember growing up and then having to deal with migraine headaches as I was a young man going to school. Always overcoming. My mother taught me something very early, though, when I had polio. Because when I was a child, they didn't know if I was going to live or die with polio. Because remember, polio in the 50s, where a lot of kids were dying from polio? My mother taught me something that stayed with me all my life. Because I went to a church called St. Elizabeth Spiritual Church of Science. And at that church, they taught me this affirmation. For I am one with the universal life forces flowing through my mind and my body, bringing me new life and energy. Nothing can come to me but good. My mother told me that every day. Every day I went out to school or going out to play, she would tell me that because she was a believer of truth. Little did I know when she died in 1984, I received her Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. I had never even sat into a Unity church, nor did I even know I was going to be one. Minister in Unity. But as the story went on, my life was going to be altered down the road. And it did, as I told those who were at the workshop Saturday. On March the 14th, I thought I was having a migraine headache. And so prior to that, I started having these flashes that was I thought was a migraine. So I told Francine about a week before I was having these flashes of a headache. And then all of a sudden, the pain started becoming very unbearable. Started seeing these ripples of light on the side of me. We went to the doctor prior to that, and they thought it was just another migraine. Doctor gave me medication. But that morning, March the 14th, I was in my room, asleep. When I woke up, Francine had already gone to work. And at that time, I woke up feeling a pain I never felt before. And I woke up, I went to grab the medication, and then all of a sudden something happened. All of a sudden my head started feeling the pain, and it was like unbelievable. And all of a sudden the pain felt like my head was ready to burst. It was on fire, and all of a sudden it exploded. And I realized I was having a brain aneurysm. The blood vessels, it burst. Only thing I had to do was try to grab my phone, was right by my bedside. I grabbed it and dialed Francine's number. And as I was dialing her number, I was collapsing at the same time. And I was able to get her, and she was about 30 miles away. Is that correct? Somewhere like that. But the serious part about it, she didn't know who I was because my voice had changed. I'm collapsing on the bedside. I'm at home by myself. The next thing I know, I was able to, before I totally collapsed, I dialed it again a second time. By this time, she didn't know what was going on. She answered and just, I don't know what she could even say, because by this time, I've collapsed on the bedside. What she told me was, she knew something was wrong, so she dialed 911, sent the police to the house. They came and kicked our front door in. My dog, look, God bless Duke. Duke was at the bedside between the police and myself. She got there just in time. They would tell you that so many people die who have a brain aneurysm within the first 8 minutes. If Francine didn't get there when she did, and they told her, you got to get the dog out the way, they rushed me straight to a hospital. When they got to the hospital, I had 3 other aneurysms, and one had already burst. My brain was being filled with blood. They then had to rush me to Detroit, Henry Ford Hospital, arrangement that could perform the surgery. And I think they told you it was a matter of time. They didn't know if I could even live. Is that correct? But as strong as Francine is, she said, look, don't worry about that. Just do what you can do. She started praying, and I'm totally, from that point on, I'm gone. I don't remember anything. I spent how many weeks in the ICU? 30 days in ICU. I had tubes everywhere you can imagine in there, totally out. I'm totally unconscious as they perform a surgery, having this brain aneurysm. As many of you know, once you have that brain aneurysm, and they say every 15 minutes, someone have a brain aneurysm that ruptures. And as I was going through this process during that time period, there were some other things going on. One of the things I will tell you that while that was taking place and I'm unconscious, what I do know is this one factor that took place. I was between two worlds. You hear people talk about having an outer body experience, because I was in one state and I don't remember nothing. But my daughter died. She was killed in Panama City, 2007 on March the 17th. Her spirit was there with me in that space between two worlds. And what I know for a fact is I was there with her, or she was with me. And her spirit stayed with me during that whole time. I'm telling you, I don't know anything about time. All I know is I was in a silvery space until the moment came that I merged back into my body. As I could feel my spirit coming back into my body. Now, Francine would tell you another story. She said when I came back, I started talking about where my 5 wives were. I said, I don't know nothing about that. She said I was talking totally out of my mind. I said it must have been 5 different lives I must have experienced. But the one thing I will tell you is I learned a spiritual truth that was right in that space. That I am not my body. I learned that the I am is perfect. When I was in between that world, I discovered more about the I am than anything else. I learned that the body is the vehicle by which we live in. I learned that the body is the vehicle that holds and houses the Christ presence. When I was in that space between the two worlds, I realized the God presence of who I am. And in that very moment of merging back into that body, I recognized the fact that I am living in this body. The body had the brain aneurysm. The body was the one that was going through the stroke. And when I came back into that body, I understood what God meant. I realized that I had to begin to work with the body. I was not going to accept the fact that I had a brain aneurysm. The body had a brain aneurysm. I had to begin to accept the fact. You understand what I'm saying? Hear me out. I knew there was work that had to be done, but I was not going to accept that the Christ, the I within me, had a brain aneurysm. Even though the body had a stroke, even though the body was going through its challenge. Every day, even though I could not walk that well, even though I couldn't raise this arm no more than here, even though there was still tubes everywhere, I had to begin the process. I had to learn how to eat with a therapist. I had to learn how to speak correctly. I had to learn how to walk correctly. And every time I kept saying the I within me is perfect. Every cell within my body is perfect. I had to learn the God within me. I had to learn that nothing can stop me from overcoming the difficulty within me. And even though I was in that wheelchair, one I will never forget, they would tell me I couldn't move as fast as I should be moving. Remember, this was only March the 14th, 2016, all this occurred. I remember one night when I was in a nursing home, they wouldn't come get me, and I had to crawl to the bathroom. I had to literally throw myself down on the floor and crawl, because in that nursing home, you know, sometimes your relatives, if you've been in a nursing home before and that night staff don't care of giving you, how many of you know what I'm talking about? And all of a sudden you had to make your way to get there. They doing you a favor. And then I had to crawl to the bathroom and lift myself up. And then they gonna get upset at me. No, but it made me more determined. It made me understand that I, within me, have to do this rehabilitation. It made me more determined that I had to push myself to recognize the God within me. I understood that. So as I pushed myself to realize that the God within me is great, the God within me can overcome this aspect of development. But I had to work. I had to believe. I was not going to let this stroke stop me. I would put a crayon in my left hand because I know I have my master's in clinical psychology. I knew that the brain waves were forming themselves as neurotransmitters were redeveloping. I would put a crayon in my left hand and start working it. I would start doing mandalas, drawing, so that the brain would start reforming itself. I had to make sure my left side was becoming developing more, and I would write. Francine would make me do puzzles over and over and over and over and over and over. I had to recognize that I would have to do these things because I wanted to set a time period and frame. I did my first talk since after the aneurysm on August the 12th, 2016. And I walked on that stage without a cane at my church. At that particular time, the title of my talk was It Mattered. That it was the undescribable name of God. Because I knew that what was inside of me was that very it that allowed me to go forward and to heal myself. That same it is inside each one of us, regardless. We call it Jehovah, Yahweh, Ogun, or God. It is the same force that exists in all of us that is indescribable. But I saw and I learned something else while I was in that rehab center. Every person I saw in that wheelchair, I saw as a wonderful presence of God. What I saw as we had a healing service one day, I asked each person, how many of you had a healing recovery? I learned something. It wasn't just about me. I saw God working in all of us. Sometimes we lose sight of how much God works with all of us. How many of you right now have had a healing experience? Raise your hand. Look around and see all those hands going up. Sometimes we forget how good God is. Let's give God a hand right now, because that's what I'm talking about. You see, it's not just about me. It's about each of us, and God is working in all of us right here, right now, and that's what this is about. When we celebrate that, when we know that, we know it as a truth. You see, that is the I am. And what occurred with that gift of grace was a great peace of understanding that came over me. A peace that allowed me to know that the God within me is so great. I was able to become still within myself. An amazing grace that occurred because I was able to know how much favor was given to all of us. Because my overcoming allowed me to see that, just as your overcoming. Because favor is given to all of us all the time. So as during this Advent season, we celebrate this peace because we know that God is there. And it truly is an amazing grace. God bless you.